I'm 78 years old now, and most mornings when the house is quiet and the kettle takes too long to boil, I still find myself thinking about the year I was 37 and how I walked away from a marriage everyone else thought was perfect. I don't say that lightly. Perfect is a dangerous word. It makes people stop asking questions.
At my age, time feels different. It doesn't stretch forward anymore. It gathers behind me. Some days it feels like it's all standing in the doorway, waiting to be acknowledged. And there's one choice it always brings forward, no matter how much I try to set it back down. I left my marriage at 37. Not because of abuse, not because of betrayal, not because we stopped loving each other. And that's what makes it hard to explain, even now. From the outside, our life made sense. We had a tidy house with pale curtains and a porch that caught the afternoon sun. We hosted dinners. We remembered birthdays. We showed up where we were supposed to. My husband was steady, decent, reliable. He didn't drink too much. He didn't disappear. He didn't raise his voice. People like that kind of story. In my 20s, that steadiness felt like safety. I grew up watching my mother brace herself against uncertainty, always waiting for something to fall apart. When I met my husband, his predictability felt like a warm coat. I didn't question it. I put it on and was grateful. We married young enough that our friends still thought love was something you could build if you worked hard enough. We worked hard. We built routines. We built a life that fit neatly inside calendars and expectations. And for a long time, I told myself that was happiness. But happiness, I've learned, can be very quiet when it's borrowed. By my mid-30s, something in me had gone still. Not broken, not unhappy in any dramatic way, just unlit. I would wake up beside him and feel grateful, but not awake. I laughed when I was supposed to. I nodded through conversations. I fulfilled my part of the arrangement. I didn't know how to name what was missing, because nothing obvious was wrong. That's the part people never understand. There were no slammed doors, no tearful confrontations, no moment where I could point and say, "There, that's it." Instead, it was small things. I stopped telling him about my thoughts because they felt like inconveniences. I stopped imagining futures that involved surprise. I stopped asking myself what I wanted because the answer never seemed practical. I told myself this was maturity. We had dinner at the same time every night. We watched the same shows. We went to bed at the same hour. On weekends, we ran errands together like clockwork. Our lives fit together so well that there was no room left for me to move inside it. At 37, I remember standing in the grocery store, staring at a shelf of cereal and feeling an overwhelming sense of panic, not about the cereal, about the idea that this was it, that if I blinked, I'd be 60 and still choosing between the same two boxes, still living a life that worked on paper but never reached my chest. That was the first time I thought very clearly, if I don't leave now, I never will. And that thought scared me more than leaving. I didn't tell anyone at first. I didn't even tell myself, not fully. I tried to fix it quietly. I suggested trips, new routines, date nights, conversations about us. He listened, he tried, he always did. That almost made it worse, because the problem wasn't effort, it was direction. I felt like I had stepped on a moving walkway without noticing, and suddenly I was far from where I meant to be, carried along with momentum instead of choice. When I finally told him I was thinking of leaving, he looked at me like I was speaking another language. I don't blame him. I didn't have the right words. All I could say was that I felt like I was disappearing inside a life that looked complete. He asked me what he'd done wrong. That question still sits with me. The honest answer was nothing and everything. He hadn't hurt me, he hadn't failed me, But he also hadn't seen me changing because I'd learned how to be agreeable long before I learned how to be honest. The day I moved out, I cried in the car before starting the engine, not because I doubted the decision, but because I knew what it would cost. I knew I was stepping into uncertainty at an age when people usually cling tighter to what they know. People were kind in that careful way that's really just confusion. Some were openly judgmental. A few said they admired my bravery. That word always felt misplaced. I wasn't brave, I was terrified. The years after were not freeing in the way movies promise. They were awkward, lonely, financially tight. I learned how to sleep alone again. I learned how to make decisions without consulting anyone. I learned that independence doesn't feel powerful when you're grieving a life you chose to dismantle. I dated a little. Nothing lasted. By then, I didn't want to fit myself into someone else's expectations again. That door had closed quietly. And then time did what it always does. It kept going. My ex-husband remarried. I heard through mutual friends. He looked happy. That knowledge was both comforting and sharp. I wanted him to be happy. I also wanted proof that I hadn't destroyed something irreplaceable. As I aged, the question people asked shifted. It was no longer, "Why did you leave?" It became, "Do you regret it?" That's a harder question. Regret isn't a clean feeling. It doesn't point in one direction. Some days I regret staying as long as I did. Other days I regret not finding a way to stay without losing myself. What I regret most is not the leaving, it's the waiting. I waited for permission. I waited for certainty. I waited for a reason that would make sense to everyone else. And by the time I acted, damage had already been done, quietly, invisibly. There was a turning point years later after my sister died. She was younger than me. Sudden illness, no warning. Standing by her hospital bed, I felt something settle in my bones. Not urgency, clarity. Life doesn't announce when you're running out of chances. It just removes them. I realized then that my marriage hadn't been wrong. It had just been incomplete in a way I didn't know how to fix. Leaving didn't solve everything. It simply stopped the erosion. Now, in this small house I live in alone, I move more slowly. I talk to myself sometimes. I keep photos I can't bring myself to put away. I have friends, but not the kind who see me every day. Loneliness at this age isn't dramatic. It's steady. It sits beside you. Do I miss him? Yes. Do I miss the life? Sometimes. But I don't miss the feeling of slowly vanishing. If you're listening to this and you're younger, I don't have advice. I don't believe in neat lessons anymore. All I can say is that a life can look perfect and still ask too much of you. And leaving doesn't always mean you win. Sometimes it just means you stop losing pieces of yourself you'll never get back. At 78, I've made peace with the choice. Not because it was right, but because it was mine. That matters more than I understood at 37. The kettle whistles now. I turn it off before it boils over. Some habits never leave you. If this meant something to you, sit with it for a moment. That's all. I've learned that moments are what we actually live in. Everything else is just structure. And structures, even beautiful ones, don't keep you warm forever.